Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Candid Conversations with Darrell Fitzgerald is a show where you will learn something new. It's a show for the courageous that wants to be engaged. A show where we discuss any issue that affects the lives of people. And a show where we take inventory of our live decisions. Welcome to Candid Conversations with Darrell Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another episode of Candid Conversations with Darrell, the show where we go in depth, we never sugarcoat, and we ask the hard questions that our viewers want to hear. On today's show, we're going to talk about a terminology that has popped up in the media, and that terminology is called the pro-racial era. I don't know if anyone in our audience have actually heard of that terminology, but the terminology, it assumes that we're living in a society where there's no racial prejudice, and also there are no racial preferences in the United States of America. And the premise is that we African Americans in the society have accomplished quite an amount of wealth, apparently. We have people like Oprah Winfrey, we have the Tiger Woods, the Michael Jordans, and so on and so forth. So there's been quite a few people in the ranks who have acquired a lot of economic wealth that are African American. And also, the premise is also created that we are now, because we have an African American or a president who has who's of African American descent, that African American people in the United States of America have arrived. So we're living in the pro-racial era, where there's no racial prejudice and no racial preferences in the United States of America. So it's kind of an odd proposition there. And we have a special guest today who is on the show to have a candid conversation about whether or not a pro-racial era even exists. Sir, would you like to introduce yourself to our viewing audience?
Sure. My name is Ken Krayeske. I am an attorney, activist, and journalist. I live up in Asylum Hill here in Hartford, and I just moved into a new law office on Main Street right across from the federal courthouse. I'm really excited about it. And when I hear when I think about your question and I think about the topic that you want to discuss, and I just think that it's a word that I probably can't say on TV, but it has something to do with bulls and manure. To say that we live in a pro-racial or a post-racial society is to attempt to move the dialogue beyond where we actually are as a people. And I straddle a very strange world. I'm in an interracial marriage. My wife is black, Puerto Rican, and my family is very white. And because I'm white, I'm exposed to a world of how people respond to blacks, thinking I'm part of their club, but I'm not. I just read a great book called Cloud Splitter by a guy named Russell Banks. It's about John Brown and the raid on Harper's Ferry, and all the stuff in Kansas that they did, you know, the slave state stuff. And it's narrated by Owen Brown, John Brown's son, the only one who survived the Harper's Ferry raid. And Owen talks about, when I read it, it hit me right on the head, because I'm like, he's white and he's a militant abolitionist, but other whites talk to him not knowing that he's a militant abolitionist and share their prejudices with him. Right. So I've had this happen to me in many, many times. And so for anyone to acknowledge, or at least try to purport that we're in a post-racial society because some members of the African American community have reached the milieu of extreme wealth, is a fraud. And I would say that William Roden, the sports writer formerly for the New York Times, wrote a book called The $40 Million Slave. And that would be part of my response to the idea that we're a pro-racial or a post-racial society, because Some people have gotten fabulously wealthy, while 99% of the rest of the blacks in this country are not really wealthy.
That's an interesting topic, actually coinage of words, and you're saying a $40 million slave.
Yeah, that's William Roden.
And just to paraphrase, what would a $40 million slave be?
Roden wrote the book in terms of professional athletes, and where it hit closest home to me, I used to do a high school newspaper here in Hartford after-school program called Echoes from the Streets. Shout out to Echoes people.
It was great.
You recall this?
Yeah, sure did.
Yeah,
I used to read it.
So
great.
Echoes from the Streets was a fantastic vehicle for exposing young people to mechanisms of power. We had a student named Wilfredo de Jesus who still lives in Hartford here. I see him now and again. And he wanted to interview Caron Butler.
Right.
So we took him all the way up to Boston so he could interview Caron Butler when the Miami Heat were playing the Celtics. And we got there, we waited. We kept telling the press guy, we're here. And Caron signed a huge contract. Caron came out of a really tough environment. He had tons of gun charges as a juvenile. Very good basketball player. Jim Calhoun takes him in, turns him into this professional basketball player, yet he wasn't free. He knew Wilfredo from when Caron was at UConn. We had a long-term relationship with Wilfredo, and they knew each other. And when Wilfredo had 2 minutes to talk to the guy as he was getting on a bus. So Caron was fabulously wealthy, but he didn't have time to even spend 2 minutes. It was so frustrating. It was aggravating. It really deeply bothered me what I saw, that this guy wanted to talk to my student, but he couldn't because there was no time in his day. It was such a structured thing, and they didn't make time for it. It's like, when you make that much money but you're not in control of your time, what are you?
Right.
And that's to me, one of the fundamental marks of freedom is whether or not you control your own time.
So, Mr. Krayeske, you would say that obviously we do live in a society where race matters, and that there is still a significant amount of racial prejudice
of course.
in the United States. Okay. Well, do you feel that we live in a society that is too preoccupied with race?
No. I don't think that we address all the ways in which it affects our society. A guy named Glenn Ford from Black Agenda Report, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he really opened my eyes when he came to Hartford. I didn't see it, but I watched it on the YouTubes there. And he talked about how race and prejudice impacts everything, from depressed housing values, and we can see that in Asylum Hill, or we can see that in the North End. You have all of these houses that need renovation, but there's no capital to renovate the houses because it's one of the few places where real estate doesn't appreciate in value. Why? Because white people don't want to live there. So how do we Laurel Street in Hartford, it's a beautiful architectural street, all 1890 brick, Victorian, beautiful, the same group of German craftsmen built the whole street. Every chimney is tipping over. Right. It costs $10,000 to replace a chimney. Nobody on the street can draw equity out of their house because there is no equity in any of the houses. Why? Because black people live there, white people don't want to live there. So I've owned property on that street for 12 years. It hasn't appreciated in value at all. Yet, you walk in and the woodwork is beautiful. I mean, it's original 1890 woodwork. It's 125 years old. If that location is what they say in the real estate trade. But the real estate values here are depressed. Why? Because white people don't want to move in. And to get back to what I was saying, I'm in this club that I don't want to be in. And so many people have told me, when I say I live in Hartford, are you crazy? It's not safe. Why isn't it safe? They won't say it, but the unspoken sentiment that I hear is that black people live there.
Right.
And it's infuriating to me. Right. And how do I break through that? I don't know that I can. But,
Would you say that we still live in a society that is really uncomfortable about talking about race, even on an intelligent way.
Yes, yes. I mean, try and have a conversation with. Now this one hurts. You know, like with your family about race. You know, it's real. I'm in an interracial marriages. There are challenges that I did not anticipate.
Right.
And I love my wife dearly, and we're overcoming those challenges. But there are challenges that I did not anticipate that I would encounter because she and all her family are black, and my family's not.
I know I'm backtracking a little bit, but you discussed a little bit about white flight and how it affects the real estate industry. So you're saying that one of the main factors that affects the appreciation or the depreciation of real estate properties in a particular area is pretty much based upon white flight.
You know, whether or not white people want to live there. I think there are exceptions to that rule. The West End of Hartford, like Scarborough Street, would be one of those examples where you have black and white living together, but it's the classification there is all of the blacks that live there are very wealthy. You have to be really wealthy to buy into Scarborough Street.
Class issue.
It's a class issue, and race and class are so completely intertwined in this country, that it's very difficult to sort of pry away the I'm showing my fingers as interlocking. It's difficult to pry away one finger from another and say, well, this is a class issue and this is a race issue, because race and class are so intertwined in this country.
Question for you, sir. Would you believe, do you believe that police brutality in the United States of America is a racial issue?
No. I think it crosses racial and color lines. I think blacks are more predominantly affected by police brutality, but if you've been paying attention to the scumbag cop up in Enfield who tightened his gloves before he whacked it, that kid was white that he beat the hell out of.
Yes.
So to me, police brutality is an issue of deference to a quasi-military authority, where we have given the state a monopoly on violence, and the state uses that monopoly, and the state deputizes psychopaths with a badge and a gun to go ahead and, you know, I mean, there are less white people who get shot. There are more Oscar Grants and Michael Browns and Amadou Diallos, and, you know, we could go on and on with the names. Emmett Till's, he wasn't a victim of police brutality, but it's more likely that if you're black, you're going to get shot.
So, like, when you're looking at police brutality, it's more so like an interpretation of numbers. I mean, obviously, you probably have a lot more people who work for police forces across the United States that happen not to be of a mixed background or ethnic background. So there seemed to be a majority,
but at the same time,
in the law enforcement to be, let's say, someone who was Anglo or Caucasian.
Yes, yeah. I mean, look at Ferguson, Missouri. But then we can look at Hartford and say, well, wait a second. We had Darrell Roberts, a black police chief here in Hartford. He presided over an extremely corrupt department. And I was on the ass end of some of that corruption, and he still has not told the truth about what happened to me. And none of the cops who I've ever put under oath have told the truth about what happened to me. I know what happened to me. I was there. I was a victim of police corruption. And luckily, I didn't get beaten or anything like that. But there was a psychological beating that I took and a spiritual beating that I took. There's nothing so dehumanizing as to be thrown in jail for practicing your rights.
How do you feel about what's going on right now in our country with the rioting with over the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson, Missouri? I mean, what are your feelings about what's going on right now? Because we have a situation that's very volatile. You have police involved with violence against citizens, and citizens who are actually shooting
I
at
weep
police.
for my country.
You weep for your country.
Langston Hughes wrote, "What happens to a dream deferred?" And the dream is still deferred, you know, and I don't know what to say. I'm so sad. I really am.
And I feel the same way.
I'm so sad. What are we supposed to do? You know, there's so much power consolidated by, you know, we've spent the last 12, 13 years giving lots of military equipment to local police forces that don't need it, and then we're surprised when they, quash the Occupy movement with brutal force, shooting an Iraq War veteran in the head with a tear gas canister so that half of his brain is gone. I mean, we are a violent, brutal, repressed society, and black and white are violently repressed, but it seems like blacks are get more of the repression, and it just, you'd like to think that 150 years after the Civil War, we'd be doing better than this.
Right. So the action that took place in Ferguson or Michael Brown, do you feel that was a justified use of force?
Never.
No. Okay.
I don't think that the murder of Aquan Salmon here in Hartford was a justified use of force.
Exactly.
I don't think that it's appropriate to shoot an unarmed person.
Right.
And if you're going to shoot him in the leg. They say, well, but like it's the whole thing is infuriating, and I'm sure Dr. King wouldn't be happy either.
Exactly. Well, Mr. Krayeske, really appreciate you providing such honest opinions, heartfelt opinions about this issue of the pro-racial era. Thanks for coming on Candid Conversations with Darrell.
Thanks for having me, Darrell.
Hopefully we'll have an
I
opportunity
appreciate
to talk again.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.